Good afternoon. Welcome. Happy Friday, everybody. We're just going to give it a few seconds for all the attendees to get into the room. We want to just always say hello in the chat to make sure the chat is working in case anybody has any questions, or just go ahead and type in the chat where you're joining from. Thank you, Jokabed. Good to see you. Perfect. So, welcome. This is our official kickoff of our Reframe webinars for 2026. This is going to be one of a four-part series that we'll be hosting specifically around Reframe's 2026 signature event, which will happen later this year. This is our annual event where we bring everyone together. And this year's theme is Innovative Advisory. This is a kind of podcast webinar series which will go on Hector's YouTube channel later on. And each time that we meet, this is going to run about an hour, and the theme is going to change. The conversation for today is going to be escaping the unsolicited advice trap. But today is not just about going over that content, but it's also about giving you some announcements about some things that are happening in Reframe, and of course, revealing to you where Reframe and when is going to take place, and a little bit more details about our signature event, the year conference that we have, like the one we had last year. So as I mentioned, this is a free webinar series, and there is CPE for those who are joining for that. And Hector can share a little bit more about those details. We are going to just share with you a little 2025 video recap of what 2025 was about. The theme was pricing with confidence, and then we'll reveal our 2026 date, location, and the agenda. What to expect for those of you who already have deposits. I know many of you here have your deposits for Reframe, and you're eager and excited to complete that registration. So we'll tell you more details about that towards the end. And as we mentioned, today is about the theme of innovative advisory and why we selected that theme, and what's the difference between proactive and unsolicited advice, how to turn engagements into proactive consulting work. And then we'll open it up for questions and talk a little bit about, for those who are holding a deposit towards the end, you want to stick around a little bit after the end of the hour, because we'll actually share with you what the portal for you to complete that, which will be giving you more information next week on how to move towards finalizing your registration for Reframe 2026. And for those who are interested, who don't have a deposit or a ticket yet, we'll give you more details on that. So I mentioned, this is a four-part series leading up to our main event, and we'll have a post-event in late November. And essentially, today is our kickoff. The next one is in April 17th. Then we'll have one in July 17th and one in October 16th. As we mentioned, we're telling you more details about Reframe 2026, which will happen in South Florida. And the slides and resources, as I mentioned before, will be available on Hector's YouTube channel, typically by the next 24 hours. You should see a polling question come up. If you see that, go ahead and answer it. Hector, just to pause real quick, anything else to add
Nope.
before we move to
No,
the
we're
next
good to
slide?
go.
Great. So in order to get your 1 hour CPE, you have to attend 50 minutes or more and answering all the polling questions. So make sure you do participate in answering the questions, and then you will be emailed the CPE within 10 business days. If not, you can email hector@qbkaccounting.com.
So let's talk about Reframe 2026. The theme for this year is called Innovative Advisory. The official date is November 5th to November 7th, with an optional extra day on November 8th. Okay, this is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then the optional day will be a Sunday. It is in Coral Gables, Florida. We chose this year to repeat venues. Like, we kind of wanted to have that fun factor at Reframe where every year is different and it feels different, et cetera, et cetera. But after shopping many, many venues and getting your feedback, like, we actually asked all the attendees what they thought about the venue. And out of, like, I think it was like 56 that responded, 55 said, do not change the venue. So I think the fact that people like the venue so much kind of encourage us to repeat it. And we looked at other things, and every there was venues that had their own special thing, right? Some had beach, some had a lot of shopping nearby, some had, like, just everything had its own thing. But these guys, they treated us very well. We did have a little bit of accounting nightmare afterwards because apparently conference accounting is not like normal accounting, right? So we had to deal with their accounting team, but we solved it, and we booked the same venue. So we're not ready to call it a permanent home, but we're super excited about it. Carlos, just make sure you post the link to the slides if people want all these details. So it's called Innovative Advisory. We picked those two words particularly because it's IA, and the subtitle or the sub-theme is flipping the AI narrative. So I think the biggest challenge today is that not what artificial intelligence can actually do, is what people are led to think of what artificial intelligence can or could do, the biggest problem. Okay, what I'm calling the narrative. So I think that we as a profession need to be one step ahead of this narrative problem and lead with advisory. But the concept of advisory is pretty trite. It's being used and overused, and it kind of lost its meaning over time. And what Carlos and I want to do is we want to bring back a true meaning of business advisory by inserting the word innovative, which basically means to make it new. Okay, so to make the advice new, make the advice feel like new, make what you're doing new, make customers feel, oh, this is different, this is new. Therefore, it's okay for it to be much more expensive, priced differently, a different business model, et cetera, et cetera. We negotiated a hotel room rate for $309 a night. If you try to book it right now, as of right now, it's close to $400. So you get a bit of a discount. And if you do double beds, I know we had a few people getting double beds, sharing rooms, is $319 per night. The location is Coral Gables, Florida, which is 5 minutes from the Miami airport. It's a 3-day event. We used to call it a 2.5-day event because day one or the first day was kind of a half day, but we're actually incorporating dinner and dinner conversations as part of the event on the first day. So it's officially a 3-day event, even though it starts at 1:30 on the first day. The ticket price is going to retail at $2,500. We're going to give people early bird access. So those that have deposits, you guys have your price locked in, and we're going to send you an email, and we're going to send you a specific workflow that you're going to follow in order for you to book that. Okay. So the ticket price is independent from the hotel price, and you can stay at the hotel or you can stay in a different hotel or Airbnb if you want to. We of course recommend the hotel, particularly because first day we have dinner in the hotel or the vicinity, so it's really cool to stay in the area. And second day we have a big party, and hey, after a couple of drinks, maybe you don't want to do a lot of walking or Ubering back to your place. Okay, so again, if you have a deposit, you're going to get an email, and the email will walk you through the workflow of purchasing the ticket with your deposited and the super early bird that we promised. But for everybody that doesn't have a deposit, the first price that you will be able to get, the lowest price will be $1,750, and this expires on March 31st. Okay, we're gonna email everybody that's in this webinar that's in the list. As soon as the tickets go live, which will be close to February 16th, because we're still updating the website, and we're custom building the entire platform that for ticketing, for reservations, for the app during the event. We're actually custom building everything in-house. So it takes a little bit longer than buying something off the shelf. So what we're doing is we're for those that want to be notified immediately, we're setting up a waiting list. So all you really need to do is click on that link that's in the slides, and you get on the waiting list, and then we'll send you an email as soon as you're able to purchase your ticket. Okay. So, and the room reservation will be available at the same exact time as we send the email. So when you get the email saying ready to buy the ticket, at that same email, the room reservation will be available. But actually, room reservation is available now, but we're gonna release everything at the same time just to avoid any confusion.
Hector, can you stop sharing and share again? It says $1,750 off. It's the price is $1,750 until 3/31. I already corrected it. Just
Okay.
we
Yeah,
want to
I
make
guess.
that verbal
So
condition.
we both had changes. So I had it as $750 off, and Carlos changed it to $1,750 as the early bird price. So yes, it's $750 off from the $2,500 ticket, which comes out to $1,750. Thank you, Carlos, for that clarification. All right, very important. Okay. All right. So what's different this year? So if you did come to previous years, what's different this year? So we are incorporating the first day. So traditionally, this is our fourth year doing this. The first day, we used to call it a pre-conference, mostly to take away some pressure from like arriving super early if people get there late or the plane gets delayed. No big deal. You didn't miss the core conference. We're not doing that anymore. The first day, the tech day, we're actually incorporating it as part of the conference because it is flipping the AI narrative. We actually need to incorporate what AI actually does into our workshops, right? Because our workshops need to have real world exercises as how we're combating the AI narrative. So we have to bring in the narrative the actual stuff that AI does so we can contextualize it with the advice that we give. Because sometimes the advice could be a combination of things you do with AI and things you do with your own human, intelligence or human knowledge. Okay. So that's a big change. Another change is the tech companies that are participating in the events, which we call the experience partners or the sponsors, they're actually required to position their app or their services within the theme. So they have to have a positioning of innovative advisory. If their tech doesn't allow us as accountants to be better advisors or give innovative advisors, or giving advisory, they cannot participate in the event. So we're going to make a restriction on that. Now, there will be some companies that they're not positioned like that. They will come in as experienced partners and we'll work with them. Like I'm literally going to give these guys free advice on how to convert their app, their business as an innovative advisory app. Okay, so that's going to be really interesting for you to see how these companies change the narrative from we solve solution A, solution B, we solve problem A, problem B, to this is how we make you better advisors. And then we're also adding an optional day 4, a business planning day, which is a lot of the feedback that we get is, hey, Hector, reframe is like, what's it called? Drinking through a fire hose is a lot of content, and I don't know how to like turn it into action. And the reality is that I cannot tell a room of 175 people how they individually will implement what they just learned, right? Because everybody's in a different stage in their business. So we're going to do a smaller group action planning day with Carlos and Trisha, where we're going to help every single one of you individually build your own business plans and the action plans that you're going to do for that day forward or 2027, whatever it may be. So that's what it is. Now, here's the tentative agenda. Like some of the particular topics could change, but this is to give you a general idea what it looks like to be here. So day 1, we start at 1:30 p.m. So lunch will be on your own. So if you are in the Miami area, we'll send you a bunch of recommendations to restaurants nearby. The idea is that you go and maybe eat with a friend, or maybe the vendors, the experience partners will invite some people. Who knows? I mean, so it starts at 1:30 post lunch. We're gonna do 2 hours of AI tech update. I get up there and I just kind of update you on everything going on in the AI tech world. And then in the afternoon, we're gonna do our first workshop, which is a tech innovation workshop. So we are going to grab a particular piece of tech or multiple techs, and we are as a group are gonna figure out how to make that tech better. I'm actually bringing in a concept from something that we did last year called the Right Tool Retreat, where we actually grabbed a particular piece of technology, we broke it down, and then we together, if we were a software company, right, each table, what would it look like to make that piece of software better? So it's actually super fun to brainstorm like that, to think like a software designer. And it's been a very particularly rewarding part of my career to have had that opportunity. Then we're going to have a welcome reception. So you guys get to know each other. We get to know the experienced partners. And then immediately we're going to go into dinner with our experienced partners. Last year was our first year doing that. It was, I would say 90, I'm going to give it an A-, because 90% there. We're going to make it now fully integrated. That dinner is going to be part of the event. It's going to be part of the learning experience. You're going to have a particular goal at that dinner to learn a particular thing. beyond also, networking with our experienced partners and other attendees. Okay, so day two, it's going to be a Friday, which happens also to be our sister's birthday, and we'll see if our sister will basically have a humongous party that day if she helps us reframe this year. She helped us last year. So we're going to start with sunrise yoga. So we did it last year. People loved it. Basically do yoga from pitch dark to daylight. So it's beautiful. We're going to have breakfast. We're going to start a little bit later. People asked us to start a little bit later because just like the day was way too compressed, especially for people doing things in the morning. For people that don't do yoga, we might do something else, like go walking, or maybe do some power stretching or something like that. Carlos and are brainstorming that piece. Then we're going to do breakfast, and then we're going to talk about what does it mean. We're going to break down what innovative means, what advisory means, and we're going to build workshops around that. This is kind of our thinking day. This is where we all start thinking cohesively. And then we'll wrap it up with actionable learnings. We're actually focusing this event for both solo individual accounting professionals, firm and firm owners. We had a lot of employees of firms that weren't firm owners that attended, that also got tons of practical advice, on things that they can do, even though they don't have the power to make major decisions. But I from my experience talking to firm owners that were sending employees, they were telling us, I'm sending an employee so they can come with ideas on how to make changes. So like I think we have been able to touch or to inspire people from all sorts of firm sizes. And 7 to 11 is party time. One thing that about Reframe, we throw a party, and a big one and a fun one. So unfortunately, our recap video didn't include the party footage because we wanted to make the video a little bit shorter to be more commercially viable. But the party is a big element of that. Okay. So that's where we are on day two. Now, day three, our wrap-up day, is kind of our practice day. We're going to have the same kind of morning. We'll have a sunrise. A sunrise yoga. We'll have a breakfast. And then we'll talk about how to implement an advisory-led business model, do an innovation workshop around that, and exactly how to give advice. So like practicing giving advice to each other and kind of what that looks like in the real world. And we'll wrap it up with turning the learning into action theme. Now, the two optional add-ons that we have is for those that stay that night at the hotel or stay in Miami and want to do the next day. We basically have two things. One, we're bringing a special guest to do a nighttime mastermind. We're gonna have drinks, light or hors d'oeuvres. We're gonna do some what we call intellectual drinking, and then we're gonna mastermind the biggest challenge that we have is how do we go back and overcome the obstacles and lead through all this change. So we'll just have an open conversation around that. I myself am a person that has had businesses that have earned over $1 million a year. Multiple businesses that do that. The special guest that we'll bring is also a very successful entrepreneur. So you're going to be able to ask us questions about how we did it, how we overcame obstacles, and how we also led through change. So that's going to be limited. It'll be like half of the event will fit on that one. And then on Carlos's planning day, we'll do a deep dive, on how to turn all this new knowledge, new insights into an actual specific action plan for you. And that's gonna be limited to 80. So that's kind of the idea of the optional add-ons. Now, I'm ready to do content, the content section, so you can earn your CPEs. But Carlos, anything that I didn't cover that you might want to cover, you might want to talk
I
about.
just threw in the chat for anyone interested in joining Reframe. If you don't already have a deposit, just click on that link that I just recently put there and then add your name to the wait list. Right now, we're not selling tickets because we have over 160 deposits that we're sifting through, and we giving priority to those who already pre-registered. And then whatever's available, we will let you all know in a first come, first serve basis. We're aiming and hoping that we will sell out this year. I'm pretty certain that we will. And so for those who haven't gotten a chance, just put your name in the wait list. We'll give you more details on it. You'll be the first to know so that you have an opportunity to be part of it with us. And the Jokovic is asking about the pricing add-ons. So for the evening of the 7th, If you want to be part of that 2 hour mastermind, that includes, adult drinks or just soft drinks and hors d'oeuvres, it's 199. And if you decide to do the day 4 planning event, there's an early bird for that at 750, but full price is 1,000, and that includes the previous evening. So you don't have to pay for the evening mastermind. So you basically the day 4 gives you the bargain of just even more but value, more benefits of being part of everything. Hector, you're on mute.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about the concept of proactive advice versus unsolicited advice. And to make this a little bit interactive so we can actually speak to like real world scenarios, I would love for you to put in the chat if you have ever tried to give your client advisory, suggestions, consulting, and the feedback or the pushback or their reaction made it feel like maybe you were not in the right place to give that sort of advice, making you feel that you made a mistake, that you gave some unsolicited advice. So do you have, has anybody had that situation, or can you give me an example of that? I would love to discuss that. And while you put that in the live chat, I'll kind of explain the background on where this concept comes from. So accounting professionals are known to be honest and transparent, which means that we should say what we think, right? That's what honesty and transparently means, right? It also means that we say what we think and we say it in a brutally honest way, even if it's not going to sound right, or even if it's going to sound like an attack, or even if it's going to sound like a criticism, right? Those are good traits for an accounting professional to have, right? To be honest and transparent. But there's a third trait that gets on the way, which is we're also discreet. We are known to be discreet. We want to be known to be discreet. Do you want an accountant or a lawyer or a priest that is going to say to the whole world anything that you told them in confidence? No, absolutely not. So even though honesty and transparency is a core trait of an accounting professional, being discreet overrides that. So I wonder if you agree with me conceptually on that. And these two things are a dichotomy. They're sort of at odds with each other. So I believe that every single time that we see an opportunity to give people advice, that element of ours that pushes us to say, hey, you got to be discreet above all, or else stops us from doing that. And the reason for that is because we do not want to be known as people that give unsolicited advice, or we don't want to be known as being intrusive, or we don't want to be known as nosy. So I think this is the big challenge that we have. As you know, a lot of thought leaders have been telling us, hey, we have to do proactive advice. Proactive advice is the number one thing that customers are going to value. This is how you differentiate yourself from computers or the lower level bookkeepers that just enter the profession, or the brand new CPAs that don't know anything about tax yet, but they just got licensed, or people that are just dabbling into accounting as a side hustle. So like that proactive advice is how you differentiate yourself from the rest. So if you're a true professional and this is what you do, and you've been doing this for a long time and you're serious, proactive advice is the thing. But then we have that little part of us that goes, wait, what if this is seen as an unsolicited advice? Because no one wants unsolicited advice, right? I mean, no one generally wants somebody to tell them something. So let me give you an example, okay? So if you were to look at your clients' bank accounts and you see that they have very low balances, and you come to them and say, hey, I noticed that you don't have a lot of money in your bank. So how can that be misconstrued? Think about that, right? So you're telling someone, hey, I've noticed you don't have a lot of money on your bank, right? So what we thought was, I noticed that you're having cash flow challenges, or I would love to help you unlock your cash flow issues. We said something like, you don't have a whole bunch of money currently, or you're poor. Now, maybe we used the right words, right? We used the right words, but the customer on the other side, that's why they heard. They heard, oh, you're just judging because I don't have that much money in the bank account. So there's a situation where an accountant can be doing the right thing, which is giving proactive advice, but is being totally misconstrued as unsolicited advice or intrusiveness or being nosy. So I want to give you, so within that context, I want to give you what I think is 8 tips to turn engagements into proactive consulting work. Okay, now put in the chat if any of this stuff resonates with you, as I'm going to add some additional context as to what the inspiration was for these 8 tips. So about a year ago, like just over a year ago, an accounting firm hired me to help their firm create more advice. And what they wanted me to do is to build an SOP for them. Now, part of our contract was this SOP that I built for them is something that for 12 months, I couldn't use it to teach it because people know when they hire me that everything I do, I teach, right? So we had a 12-month contract on that. And then after 12 months lapse, I was able to share, what we built together. So this is basically an SOP that I built. And I'm actually going to share this with you guys, but I'm actually going to take one more twist into this. This is a very simple SOP that we built. So all their new employees, all their accountants knew exactly how to go about making that transition, the transition from a regular accounting engagement into an advisory engagement. So I'm going to share this document with you, but I'm going to enhance this document. I'm actually we're going to finish this webinar, okay? And as soon as we're done, we're going to grab the transcript of all the things that I'll teach here, the examples that maybe Carlos and I will do a little conversation on, some of your feedback, your Q&A, and then I'm going to implement it, and we're going to crowdsource my base document and the content that we cover here today. So hopefully you're excited about that. If you're in the list, you will get an email with that, along with the slides and a copy of the recording. Carlos, do you have any questions or comments or anything before we go into the 8 tips?
No comments or questions.
Okay. So the second piece of this, and I want to pre-frame this as one of the reasons why a lot of accounting professionals are apprehensive to give proactive consulting work or advice, is because one, there's an expression called, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if your customer didn't tell you, I have this broken thing, okay, I'll give you an example. Like your customer not understanding that their internal bookkeeping is the internal bookkeeper is effing things up, or your customer not seeing the fact that their manager is a cancer to the culture of their business, or not seeing or refusing to see, because this will be something that they will put the blinders on, that their personal spending habits and their personal lifestyle gets in the way of operating a good business because they're extracting money or making personal decisions on on using the money for the business. So these are all situations where we feel like we need to help these people and we need to tell them something. But if they didn't tell us that they needed help with that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, why are we introducing a new problem? So a lot of accountants are apprehensive to go, you know what? My engagement is working. I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to do. I'm getting paid. Why in the world would I introduce a new element into this? One. Second reason why people are very apprehensive to give proactive advice, all of a sudden, they're creating a problem for themselves. So as an accountant, by bringing something out into the open, something that we have never discussed before, all of a sudden, I opened up a can of worms, and it's a new topic of conversation that I have to follow up on. They're going to follow up on. It now expands the monthly, whatever it is, monthly or quarterly conversation into talking about this one thing because I opened up Narnia's closet of this whole new concept, okay? So as an accountant, I'm like, why am I giving myself more work? And the third reason why people are apprehensive towards like pointing something out is, what if I don't know how to fix it? I'm an accountant. I'm not a marketing consultant. I'm an accountant. I'm not an HR professional. I'm an accountant. I'm not an operations expert. I'm an accountant. I'm not a process engineer. Why am I bringing these things up? because now the fear is that as an accounting professional, because I brought it up, because I told it was a thing, because I told it it was significant, because I told it I could charge him to help him fix it. Now my worry is now I put that relationship in strain. I have a potential strained relationship because the all of a sudden I was very good at delivering 100% of the things I said I would deliver, and I introduce a new element, a new thing that I don't know how to deliver, and then again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Also, out of sight, out of mind, ignorance is bliss. All those things come into play. So, as an accounting professional, do I want to get myself into trouble by stepping into a landmine that I shouldn't have stepped in? I think that many of you either think that way, top of mind, or subconsciously think that way. And that what stops you or slows you down from getting into consulting work or proactive advice. Go in the chat and tell me if you agree with me that these are the things that make you apprehensive towards getting into advisory or proactive advice, right? If you only if you agree, of course, I'm not forcing you. If but any of those three. Yeah.
Hector, I mean, just my outside looking in perspective. I also imagine just all of your entire career. You're reading books, you're taking courses, and you're taking CPEs about all the things that puts your license and your reputation on the line. You know, all the risks that you have to avoid. Like you are literally being trained to avoid landmines and to be very careful about what advice you give. So I think that programming also creates a lot of apprehension, hesitation, a lot of T's that you need to cross and I's that you need to dot before you actually get verbally recorded for any kind of advice. I don't know if that's something that resonates with you, Hector.
It does 100%. I would love to ask you, you have your own type of engagements. You don't do accounting work, but you do consulting for accounting firms. You do tax dom implementation consulting. You do communications training, sales training. Have you had a situation where you were giving someone advice and it just went, the other way?
Of course. I mean, I've got people that are asking me, I mean, that they're putting their livelihood of their business on the line by deciding to raise their price. Because, that's one of the coachings that we do, right? Is that I may talk to this one client, but I think asking clarifying questions, getting context, and helping get reference and contrast. Like I have an example of someone who's like, if I lose this client, I'm just so afraid of losing this client. And then I asked them, what percentage of your overall revenue does this one client represent for you? Oh, not that much. I have like 75 different ones. Okay, so what is the real fear here that you have? Like if you lose this client, is it going to stop you from making your mortgage payment or being able to eat food tomorrow? So, I think part of advice is also about perspective. If you can help the other person self-discover the perspective in which they're looking at the problem, sometimes the advice can be given just through a series of questions. You've said this before, Hector. You've ever been in a client conversation where you've never actually given the advice. The advice was actually inside of the question. So I think it's more of also flipping the narrative that don't feel like advice has to be a statement. It doesn't have to be a this is my advice. It doesn't have to start with that sentence. The advice could just be is how do you gather such good context that you can challenge the perspective without being insultated. Like you're not trying to insult or you're shaming them or embarrass them, or it's not a I'm right, you're wrong. It's more of, is it possible that the way you're looking at this in comparison to reality might be, not aligned. And so I think it's really, you could give really good advice by the way you frame questions and also in the way you got from the context that you've gathered from the client's perspective.
Exactly. So a couple of things that you mentioned are actually kind of part of let's call it the tips that we're going to be covering today. The first one is setting the stage early. And what I mean by this, for the most part, is that we do not go from being a non-consultative professional to a consultative professional overnight. So setting the stage early means having the patience that, hey, July 1st, we're an advisory first firm. start telling people this information way ahead of time. Okay. So maybe update your website and change, how everything on the website that used to talk about bookkeeping or tax planning or QuickBooks or whatever, just have it only talk about advice, only have anecdotes about people that you have helped with advice, only have um, case studies of businesses that you helped transform, only have testimonials from people saying this person took me from A through to B or through Z or whatever. Just changing that first, okay, and then emailing your customers to say, hey, just want to let you know we have a new website. That's kind of like the first thing, okay. The second one is, again, that was like first, right? The second one is you send an email saying, hey, by the way, starting July 1st, we're only going to keep our clients that engage us into advisory, right? So, and then the customers that only want to work with compliance, we're going to start transitioning them out. So in the next coming months, you're going to get a couple of emails kind of walking you through what that transition looks like. But you do it way ahead of time, okay? Again, you got to set the stage way, way early. Okay, maybe in the new updated engagement letter, you never before have written down that this particular engagement does include advisory, and then advisory work is a separate fee that will be quoted on the spot based on the scope of the outcomes or the transformation. Okay, so you start putting that cue in your engagement letter. Okay, telling your clients, hey, we're getting together with everybody in May. We're going to have a advisory call. It's actually going to give you the first one for free, where we're going to walk through and talk to you about all the things that we want to help you with in your business. And you'll grab from there what works for you. Okay. But we're going to give you the first one for free. And again, this is going to be a slow transition into it. I think one of the major mistakes that people make is just going straight to it. And it just doesn't make sense because the customer did not see any actual progression. They've been working with you for 5 years or 10 years, and you have never talked about charging for advisory or having a separate advisory engagement or advisory being the new thing, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of shocking. So you want to avoid that surprise. Okay. So some of the things you can say, I'm going to give you particular sort of statements you can say. You can say something as simple as, our ongoing work covers X, but we also offer deeper strategic consulting when you're ready. Okay, so that could be one way to set the stage. Another way is, if larger goals emerge, we can step into an advisory role beyond the day-to-day or beyond the bookkeeping or beyond the annual tax return, right? You insert there whatever your current role is. You can also say something like this during the onboarding, the client onboarding. You can say, most of our clients start with a core accounting engagement, but over time, we naturally uncover areas where strategic guidance makes a real difference. Again, this is the way you start hinting at it. Okay, the engagement letter could have something like phase 1, operational bookkeeping work, phase 2, and you can put when you're ready. A strategic advisory, right? So you can start, kind of hinting it also in the engagement letter. Also, in early conversations, you can say something like this: we find that once we are deep into the numbers, opportunities all of a sudden surface, okay? And they're way beyond compliance. We're gonna flag those for you when they come up, and then we'll offer a few ways we can help you kind of pursue those opportunities. Again, those are very specific statements on how you communicate that sort of early staging of the advisory. The second one is anchor advice to context. And Carlos actually hinted at this, which is when you tell someone you should do this and it has zero context, that is absolutely uninvited input, right? That's unsolicited advice. So what Carlos hinted at is you should be in the context gathering business, okay? This happens through a value conversation, asking tons of questions. We've spent a lot of time at REFRAME events, especially 2024, and in REFRAME Society, talking about about the quality of the questions. So you're going to be asking all these questions, and you're not just being nosy by asking the questions. You're writing this down somewhere, right? You're gathering this context, not just remembering it, but having a CRM or a practice management system or somewhere where you just always record that context that you're gathering, right? If you have transcripts from your Zoom calls, you copy and paste that into it, because at some point in time, between all the notes you take from the questions you ask and all the conversations you have via Zoom, you will have enough context to then be able to tie the advisory to it. So imagine a world where I have 2-3 years worth of conversations with my client between Zoom and email and face-to-face conversations where I wrote content. And then all of a sudden, I realize that my clients' margins are dwindling, or all of a sudden I realize that they're selling less of one particular model, or they're being less profitable in one particular type of job, or they're not raising enough funds in the nonprofit to cover expenses from a particular program, and they're borrowing money from another program, or they're falling out of compliance on tax stuff. So when we see a situation where there could be really good advice, we can grab all that content, throw it into ChatGPT and say, hey, I just found out that this particular client has this problem. Could you tie back to a note, a different conversation, so I can make a smooth transition to say, hey, on July something, I have in my notes saying this was an area of concern for you, and I was thinking about you, and I noticed that this happened. Boom. And then that's how you make that transition. So that's actually a really important thing, right? You have to be able to tie it. So you can say things like, since you mentioned that we're looking for growth, or since you mentioned that you're burnt out, since you mentioned that you work too many hours, since you mentioned that your manager isn't performing, since you mentioned that you lost a couple of vendors last year, since you mentioned that you lost a key employee. I know Carlos likes to use the particular exactly what to say terminology, because it's because of the fact that you said blank, then I'm suggesting blank, right? So it's because of the fact that you said, because it basically says, this is not unsolicited advice. It's, you told me to be looking out for this. You told me that you wanted me to notice that, whether you said it directly or explicitly, or you meant it, that this is the role that I want you to play. And we'll talk about role in a little bit of second. So again, you mentioned, you told me, you said, you commented, since you wanted this, since you wanted that, you always tie it to the original context. And I tell you, it gets much, much easier to give that advice. So that leads us to avoiding uninvited input, okay, or unsolicited advice. So one of the ways that we can make the transition, and we also use exactly what to say terminology for this, is, will it be helpful? I almost always think that the best entrance, the best door into something that might be seen as unsolicited advice, but you really need to wedge that door open because you need to help these people, is by saying, will it be helpful? Okay. You could also use, I'm not sure this is for you, but, okay. So you can do either one. So will it help if, will it be helpful is, I'm not sure this is for you, but. So what you do is you kind of give them the choice that whatever comes afterwards, right, it's something that they choose whether or not they want to engage on, not something that you're forcing the conversation into it. Okay. So will it be helpful to explore if this particular problem could be optimized? Okay. So you can start with something like that. Okay. Or you can say, I've noticed your margins are going way down this year versus last year. Would it be helpful if I share how I found out this information? Or would it be helpful if I share the particular reports that I use in order to get to that conclusion? Okay, I'm not sure this is for you, but I've noticed that some of your expenses are skyrocketing in the last couple of months versus previous months. We have a an expense monitoring advisory program where we sit down with you and we kind of rebudget your entire business to work around, being a little bit more frugal with your expenses so we can enhance your profitability or protect your profits or whatever. Okay. For those that have other programs that they sell or that they recommend, like Profit First, you can say, hey, would it be helpful if I walk you through a simulation of what the Profit First program would look like in your business with your actual cash flow? So those are all really, really important. You could also, I've been thinking about you from the last conversation, or I've been thinking about you and my other construction clients, right? So you can lump them into, so it's not so personal. You can say, hey, I've noticed that a lot of my construction clients are running into this problem. Would it be helpful if I show you how this problem could potentially apply to what's going on with you, right? So that's the uninvited input. And then Lisa or Lisa is asking, sometimes clients don't want to change their habits. How do you deal with that? So the reality is, like, giving advice is not telling people to change their habits. Giving advice is helping people decide if they want to change their habits themselves. So you first have to frame the conversation around, do you want to change your habits, right? So the context gathering happens where the customer told you that the single most important thing that they needed is they needed their employees to respect them. Then you go back and go, hey, Mr. Customer, remember a couple of months ago when you told me that you're losing respect from some of your employees? Based on the numbers that I'm looking, I may have found some of the root causes for that. Would it be helpful if we schedule a call to talk about those and then a potential action plan around it, right? So then he or she would have to say, yes, that would be helpful. That way they're inviting this change, right? But you can't just tell people change their habit. So if I have tons of clients that use their business as their own personal piggy bank, and then they wonder why their employees don't respect them or have animosity towards them because they get to see through their bank spending all their personal stuff. They go play golf or they buy big expensive gifts for their kids or they go on vacation or whatever. And that's all shown in there. And for a fact that they need to change that habit. But if I just tell them, stop running personal expenses through your business, it's a bad look. Your employees are not going to like you. That's unsolicited advice, and it just won't go anywhere. And they're gonna drop you, or it's just not gonna work. So then you have to first frame it. You have to say, you told me this is important to you, and I remember this. Therefore, would it be helpful if we transition into a conversation about how to solve it or how to change it? So, Lisa, hopefully that answers your question. It's they're the ones that have to change their habits, not you don't have to change it for them. Go ahead, Carlos.
Again, and that's a very sensitive topic for like the example. You could say, stop running your personal expenses because this will happen. You could also ask, hey, I noticed that last time we talked about this was an important aspect to you. Something came in mind, who else has access to seeing the activity? This person and that person. And could it be possible that when they're looking at transactions and behaviors and habits, that there's an impression that it's creating around what you say versus what you do? And what risk could that have in terms of their engagement? You see, like it's much different when you frame it in a question where in their mind, they're formulating the perception, the answer, because when they say it, it must be true. When you say it, it might not. And that's really, really deep wisdom that I learned from Phil Jones is that when they say it, it must be true. When you say it, it might not. And that's the problem that we run into too much is we have the problem of becoming an advice monster because we suffer from solutionism. We know the answer, so we just want to cut through all the crap and just tell them exactly what they need to hear. But for most people, they don't really like getting unsolicited advice. What they want is they want to be challenged, being asked certain questions where they have to reflect, their brain has to break a little bit. And once they kind of get through that, at the very least, the one thing that you can achieve in that asking that really uncomfortable, difficult, deep question is when they go to sleep that night, that little question is going to be scratching their brain. and they're going to be thinking and expanding more about what they're thinking about. And the next day, they're going to keep on thinking about the question that you asked, and they won't stop thinking about it until little by little, Inception style, they start shifting their perspective. And maybe they call you back a day or two later after they digest it, and they say, you know what, I've been really thinking a lot about the thing that the conversation we had the other day. And I think you're right. I think I probably need to change this. It takes time and it takes patience. And we have to just get better at shifting from advice giving, like unsolicited advice giving, to just slowing it down and asking a very thoughtful question that gets them to digest it, because changing someone's perspective takes time.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Carlos. And I think that the language thing is how we frame the advice is at the heart of innovative advisory, is giving advice without the other person knowing that that you're giving them advice. Okay, they are paying for your wisdom. It's very important. They're paying for your experience. They're paying for your access. They're paying for your wisdom. They're paying for your good judgment. They're paying for that because you have to charge for it. But this is on the macro. But on the micro, they're making changes without necessarily recognizing as, oh, I'm changing because they told me to change. So I'm going to butcher this quote, but one quote I heard is, when you're really good at what you do, you make it seem as you were not involved at all. So when you're really good at what you do, you make it seem as you were not involved at all. And that's a masterful way of kind of looking at the world, is I'm going to solve the world's problems without ever getting any credit for being the one that spearheaded the solution for that problem. And the only way to do that is to somehow get the other person to feel that that change was their idea, not yours. But they know that it was their idea, not yours, because they had you as their advisor. Okay? Because you're not telling them what to do. You are advising them on the things that they were already pretty sure they were going to do. They just didn't know how to get it started, or they didn't know how to apply it, or they didn't know how to when to kickstart it. So I think the advisor's role sometimes is very tacit, right? It's very light. It's very there. It's like a little Midas touch there, right? It's not like a full blown. You need to do this. You need to do that. It's more like, could it be possible that this is a better path? And you leave, and then the customer is left with that question. It could be possible that this is a better path. Therefore, I will take the new path, right? So you're not saying this is a better thing you got to do. You're saying, is it possible that this thing is better? And let that person decide for their own that behavior change was better. And this stuff takes time, man. Like you're not gonna have a client that all of a sudden you're charging for, and within a month or two they see major changes. Sometimes people have to pay for your advice for a year, 2 years, 3 years, until a breakthrough happens. If any of you have been to therapy, okay, and I think therapy is a very good example. If any of you have been to therapy, I have a loved one that has been to therapy, the first session doesn't fix everything. And I would tell you from personal experience, the first 6 or 7 sessions, they make things even worse, because you start talking about things that you weren't ready to talk about. You start realizing things that were broken, that you probably you didn't realize that they were broken. Like I think a Karate Kid, very famous movie where Mr. Miyagi kind of like is teaching him karate through washing cars first, or waxing cars first. And he's like, why am I learning this? Why am I learning this? Why are you making me wash a car? It doesn't make any sense. But it wasn't until he's in a situation where the car waxing movements mimicked, defensive karate movements, where he went, oh my God, this foundational thing was created as a bedrock for a much higher, more challenge in the future. So it is the biggest challenge is figuring out how to give this thing value, how to charge for it, even though it takes a very long time for these things to kind of come into fruition. So the next step is shifting the perception of value. So this is the most difficult piece, for two types of clients. One is for an existing client that you've never charged for advisory before, the one that's used to you charging for pretty much for effort, for hours or whatever it is. And secondly, it could be a new client that called you asking for bookkeeping or for a tax return. They didn't call for advisory, and you're trying to sell them advisory. And it's like, wait, are you listening to what I'm asking for? So some of the things that you can do is pretty much, especially when you get a little bit of pushback, where you can say this advisory engagement is about delivering a result or delivering a transformation, not effort. So we can't tie it to effort, especially when they say, how many hours is it going to be? Or what is your entire engagement? Now, the most important piece of this, and this is the hardest thing for accountants to digest, is you have to take risks. If you're not taking a risk as an accountant, as an advisor, then you're not shifting the perception of value. You see, when your services were tied to effort, the only risk you're taking is spending time to do the work, right? But now you're telling people, no, I'm going to advise you into better results. I think within a year, we should be able to increase your sales by 20% or decrease your costs by 30% or increase the amount of time that you spend at home or increase the amount of vacations that you take. And we'll talk about that in a second. That's a sensitive one too. And it might take a year or two, but I think we're going to be able to get there. And if we don't get there, I don't get paid, or I have to refund you, or I give you a partial credit for partial performance. So that's a really important piece that you have to be able, the only way to shift perception of value usually is to take risk yourself. And that's a very difficult one for a lot of accountants to digest. Yes, for the bookkeeping work, for the tax return work, charge monthly or charge per tax return. But for advisory, you got to get really creative on how you charge for it. The other thing that you can do, and this is how you flip the whole script, and this is kind of a bold move. I've said this before, you probably heard this before, is the tax returns and the bookkeeping work, you do it for free. You tell people, oh yeah, tax return, that's for free. I don't charge for tax returns. Or bookkeeping, I don't charge for bookkeeping. They say, well, what do you charge for? Oh, I charge for an advisory engagement. So you pay me $2,000 a month. I'm your accounting advisor. I cannot give you advice with a clean set of books. I cannot give you advice with quarterly tax planning. I cannot give you advice without you being compliant. Because if you're not compliant, we're spending time chasing after letters to the IRS or whatever. If your bookkeeping is wrong, we're chasing after numbers are incorrect. So therefore, the bookkeeping and the tax return, that's free. Like we don't charge for it. We don't have a mechanism to charge for it. We charge only for the advice. But don't worry, it's all included. So that way you completely decommoditize, you disappear. It's no longer on the table. That bookkeeping and tax returns are a thing that people buy. People only buy the advisory. Okay. And then if the conversation of AI comes up, it goes, yeah, with today's technology, with AI, all that stuff, a lot of that stuff can be automated. We have the know-how. Our team knows how to do it. You don't have to worry about it. We take care of it. What you're paying for is our advice. And that's how you counter narrative, right? The whole thing that, oh, everything should be cheaper and easier because AI can automate things. And you go, yeah, but if it costs zero, there's nothing to compare it against. The customer can go, oh, bookkeeping should be cheaper. So what's cheaper than zero? We don't charge for bookkeeping. We never charge for bookkeeping. We only charge for advice. Oh, I'm going to get the bookkeeping done somewhere else. Can I just hire you for advice? Sure, it's the same price because bookkeeping has no value to us. Tax returns have no value to us. That's kind of it's a pretty gutsy way of doing it, but I'm sure a couple of you are going to grab that and go, "Ooh, I like that idea. I'm going to start experimenting with stuff like that." And that's okay. I think that's totally fine. Okay. And if it doesn't work, revert back to your other ways. It's fine. Okay. Next one is invite collaboration to avoid the perception of a pitch. So a lot of people feel that by bringing in this new problem and saying we look, what a coincidence. I just found a problem that we happen to have a solution for. That sounds like a pitch to a lot of people, right? So inviting a collaboration, again, we'll go back to our magic words. Will it be helpful if we tackle this problem together? So will it be helpful if we prioritize all the biggest challenges in your business together? Okay. So let's start strategizing and we'll see what's possible. Or say something like, I don't have all the answers yet. I only have a hypothesis. Do you want to pressure test together some of these hypotheses? Okay. So that's kind of the way that you start you're inviting a collaboration. And then from that collaboration, you pitch, you call it, you pitch your advisory, but you have to invite the collaboration first. I think that's key. The second one is, okay, so I know Carlos has done this quite a bit as a consultant. I've done this quite a bit as a consultant. There is a very, very useful consulting technique called the people versus process problem. So at any point in time that your customer comes to you and goes, hey, my profits are down, or my expenses are too high, or my revenues have gone down, then you break it down into, okay, let's see, is this a people or a process problem? That's simple, right? So if it's something wrong with the technology, it's a process problem. If there's if people are not going through the right permission structure or not getting an approval or something like that, it's a process problem. But if the person is doing the wrong thing or making mistakes or stealing or approving too much expenditure or whatever it is, then it's a people problem. And this is a very, very basic, like consulting 101. If you want to go out and do consulting, anytime the customer tells you I have this problem, you start with, okay, let's break it down. Is this a people or process problem? You collaborate in that conversation. And from there, you start breaking down, how much of this looks like a people person, how much of this looks like a process person. That's a process problem. Break the first step. And then within it, you break down, oh, it's a process problem. Okay, is the process created incorrectly? Or is the process not being followed? Is the process not being audited, verified, or monitored? Okay, so that, and then you break it down and you go from there. So it's actually a very simple way of doing consulting. But I found that there actually is a third layer to this. So it's people, process, and leadership. Because leadership is the people that dictate the processes. So sometimes you have both a people and a process problem because there's something wrong with leadership. The business owner, the manager, they're setting the tone at the top wrong. They're setting the wrong example. They're saying you must do this, but they don't do it themselves. Or they're saying this is really important, and then in the long run, they don't enforce it when it doesn't get done. Or they play preferential treatment, and then they allow some people to break process and some people doesn't. So sometimes the people and process problem doesn't, the dichotomy of only breaking it out to those doesn't really bring out to the open the fact that this could be a leadership problem. So you also want to be careful with making sure that you're not attacking the leadership directly. But if there's a point in time where you go, hey, I went back and analyzed this, and this is a combination of people and process problem, that means it's a leadership problem. Okay. And then that's a much tougher conversation. But by the way, any clients that you have, this is a leadership problem conversation, you have elevated yourself into a 10 levels up as an advisor, and or also invited yourself to get fired really quick because they'll get insulted by calling them a bad leader. So it's actually, it's a double-edged sword, let's call it that. The seventh one is the work-life balance. So I think that an area where accountants can give great advice is helping people what they call sleep better at night, right? So, that's the proverbial one, right? So we're going to help people, be less anxious or take more vacations or spend more time at home or, less time at the office, whatever the context of the work-life balance thing is. But I want you to position it wisely, because even though it sounds to you that this is the most important thing to tackle, you might be possibly insulting people's choice on what work-life balance means to them, right? Someone that's a workaholic that works 50, 60 hours, they might enjoy work so much that you telling them that they're a workaholic is insulting their very being. Or telling them that they need to spend more time at home is telling them that their input, their work, their value is not as valuable. So you kind of have, even though I love leading with this one, because for a very long time, this was what I led with, people tell me, what do you do? I say, I help my clients take more vacations. Like I literally led with the work-life balance statement. That's how I told people, that's my why. Okay, why do I exist? Why should people hire me? It's because by working with me, you will take more vacations, guaranteed. Now, what does that imply? That implies you were able to delegate. That means you can disconnect. That means you made more money, so you can afford to take a vacation. There's all sorts of loaded things in there. So I think that saying I help you take more vacations is an extremely valuable thing. You just want to be careful not to position it as I'm judging, your work-life balance choices. Okay. And the last one is escaping the hourly trap. And this one's hardest for those that when you picked up this client, even if you transition to value pricing, if you ever used the hour as an indicator for anything, or you ever commented, this should be quick, this shouldn't take too long, I'll get it done in half a day, at any point in time that the context of the conversation that you had, if it involved time, even if you don't charge by the hour today, when you switch to advisory, people are your clients are going to look at your advice as the time you spend advising. And this is a huge trap, because if you think about for a second, I want you to think about for a second. I want you to close your eyes for a second and think, what is the best advice anyone has given to you, business or personal? Okay, and if you want to put it in the chat, put it in the chat. That should be interesting too, to see. So what is the best advice that you have ever received, business or personal? I want you to think about that, okay? What is the best advice, business or personal, that you have ever received? Okay, and put it in the chat if you want to share it, okay? Then I want you to take that advice. I want you to turn on the timer on your phone, hit start, say the advice, and hit stop. And then tell me how much time it took to give that piece of advice. Again, hit start, say the advice that they would give you, hit stop. How much time did that take? How much time did that take? So for you to somehow grab the time it took to give that advice and connect it to the value is the biggest trap that you can give. Now, I want you to take a step back one more time and think about this best advice you have ever received. But I want you to think of the context. When the advice was given to you, who gave it to you, what was happening in your life and business for them to give you that type of advice, and the position you were in your life in order to receive that advice. So think about all those contexts and think about the fact that all those additional contexts played into how this great advice actually turned to be great advice. Because you can receive a lot of great advice ill-timed, and it'll either do nothing, you will dismiss it, you will forget it, or you will see it again as intrusive, unsolicited advice. So sometimes the value of the advice is not the words that you're saying, is the buildup, the relationship, the context, the timing, the where, why, when, who, what was happening at that moment for that advice to come out. And just like going into therapy and waiting 6, 7, 8 sessions, 2 months, 2 years to finally have a breakthrough, this happens in advisory. Okay. I may give you all sorts of random advice for 6 months, and I'll give you the one thing that will save your business, the one thing that will let you sell it, the one thing that will break through and completely change your business model 3, 4 months later, and almost trivially, almost as if it wasn't even the thing that I thought was going to be the most valuable, it ended up being by chance. So the effort trap of how long advice takes to give is the worst trap you can have. So I'll leave it open for Q&A. If anybody has any questions or comments, If not, Carlos, I'll let you share really quick for those that are coming to Reframe 2026 so they can see what our portal is starting to look like so they know how to purchase a ticket. But I'll be monitoring the chat
Okay.
for any open
Hector,
questions.
before we do that, I do have a question that comes to mind. I think as advisors or trusted advisors, for those who have clients, sometimes a client's asking for advice that's outside our expertise. And we might, and I saw some things in the chat about like, how do I continue to position myself as a trusted advisor, but then I have to borrow from a third party expert, and maybe I'm afraid to recommend someone because I'm not certain or confident about how the other person is going to treat this client, right? This puts my reputation on the line and my relationship on the line. But then not doing that can also limit my ability to be a valuable resource to my client. You kind of understand that's this idea.
Yeah.
If I don't have a team of resources available to my client, I am less valuable of a resource to my client. If I do refer this to another person and that other person drops the ball, I'm risking the relationship. This dilemma of as an advisor positioning my value. How do you navigate through that?
Well, the first thing I would, so let's say, for example, that you are going to suggest a marketing person or suggest an operations management person or a process reengineering person or a tax person, whatever. What I generally would do is to have at least two or three recommendations and say, hey, these are my network of people that I usually recommend for situations like this. You have person A, B, and C. I recommend that you write them an email and maybe even be helpful and give them a template and go, look, like I'll give an example. So I have a couple of people that I recommend for like really, really highly customized reports. And I talk to them, it's like three of them, and I ask them, hey, what is the best possible lead I could give you? And they say, okay, the best possible lead is one that knows exactly what they want, has an illustration of what the report looks like. The data is actually available in QuickBooks or whatever accounting software, so I can pull it. Or if it's not available, they actually will tell me what the input process looks like. They tell me how often they want the report, who's going to pull it, and in what format they want it. So a customer like that is actually perfect for me, and they're willing to spend $2,500 for a report. Okay, perfect. So they told me what they wanted. Okay. So then I can use ChatGPT for this. I can put it in there and go, hey, help me write a quick questionnaire of the best possible way that this person I'm recommending can go about and shop this expert advice. And then you go to them and say, hey, I got three potential people that can help you with this. These are the typical questions that they'll ask you. So email them, your story, your backstory like this, and they're going to go back and give you quotes, et cetera, et cetera. You could also say, so on the risk of them screwing up part, right, which is a part of your question, is you could also say, hey, we're not affiliated with them. I will be as involved as possible on looking at the outcome of the work, but fortunately, because I'm not involved and I'm not the one charging you, I can't take responsibility over that. Or you could also say, hey, I will work with a subcontractor. I'll take the risk if something gets screwed up. I'm going to charge you. I'm going to monitor the whole thing. You're going to have to add tons of margin into that. And like I said before, take the risk. If that person screws up, you're going to have to go to the backup person and pay the other person, and then fight with your vendor to figure out how to get a refund on what they did or something. So it's just basically multiple approaches to that, I think.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I have the payment portal already. Should we shift to that for anybody who's made a deposit still here or wants to register for Reframe, or is there anything else?
I don't know. I wasn't reading all the. I don't see anything else. Somebody saying, "Do you have a printout of all the 8 tips?" So yes, I actually have it as an SOP, but I'm also going to add all the context from this conversation, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to have basically an AI version of a summary of the conversation we had today, based rooted on that SOP, and I'm going to email it to everybody that's in the list.
Great. So with the time that we have left, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And next week, you'll be receiving an email that will take you to this screen. And essentially, if you made a deposit already for Reframe and you're ready to finish your registration, you can go ahead and add your email to this portal. We're just going to use a demo as an example. And then it'll walk you through if you, let's say you have 2 tickets, 2 deposits, it'll automatically apply the discounts or the early bird and give you the balance of what's due. You will register yourself through here by adding all the information that's required for us to be able to process. And then if you wanted to add the day four action planning day, you could just add to cart. It'll automatically include you into the evening mastermind. If you only want to be part of the evening mastermind, you can just add that and it'll do that. And you can choose how many guests you want to have, depending on how many you're registering. So we're still working this out with our technology partner. We want to make sure we have everything working as it should. This is in a testing site right now, but it will be up and running by next week. You will get more information on that. And for those of you who are interested in joining Reframe and you haven't made a deposit um, prior to that, go ahead and add yourself to the waiting list, and Hector and I will send you the link for you to register at the early bird price. And yeah, we're super excited. I don't think I have anything else to add. So Hector, any final thoughts?
Somebody asked about a companion, like how do companions work? We don't have that worked out yet, but in the past we've had companion tickets for people that want to be involved with the party, with the food, with all like the net, like sort of the networking and social events, but not in the actual in the room doing the live exercises. So we'll have an option for that.
I think as far as speakers go, we have confirmed that last year we had Trisha Browers as one of our speakers. She will be back this year. Whether she's be on stage or not, she will be part of Reframe. We're very more than likely have her in the day four because she has ICF, coaching certification, and we're gonna build together a really amazing business planning and coaching day. And so she'll be my partner in crime for the day four event. But we are working with one or two potential, big thought leaders to be our keynotes, but we have not confirmed it, and we should be able to announce that in the next coming months. But
Yep.
Hector will have a role to play in this on stage. I will have a role to play on stage. I will be delivering uh, I won't share with you, but I will be announcing a new methodology and framework that I will be sharing that is connected to innovative advisory. I'll kind of just say it out loud. I'm writing a book, and so I will be launching that for Reframe. So that should be very exciting for everyone. So this is the first time I say this out loud to this world. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, I'm not a book guy. I'm a YouTube video guy. So my YouTube channel is my book. On the keynote speakers, every year Carlos and I announce Reframe, and we don't talk about the other keynote speakers. Carlos and I want to sell this as Carlos and I. So Carlos and I can deliver all the value plus more. That being said, in the past 3 years, we only brought top-notch speakers to our detriment, because like literally all the potential profits from Reframe go to grabbing the best speakers. So I promise you again, it will either be just Carlos and I and giving you the best experience of your life, or bonus, you're gonna have some incredible speakers there that will add some color commentary. So that's the promise I make. I think the both of us have enough street cred and enough goodwill by doing these webinars with our videos and stuff, so you guys know that we're good for promising something big for Reframe this year. That being said, thank you very much, guys, and get back to tax season for those who are doing taxes. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.